Monday, 8 a.m. More than usual hysteria on my desk this morning. C said something about a full moon. I said there wasn't going to be a full moon for days, and he shuffled absurdly back to his office, shrugging. What is it about Mondays that makes me so filled with contempt for everyone around me? Of the day's reports, there was the usual high proportion of reported hauntings that could all adequately be explained by cheating spouses coming home late at night. 2 of them seemed a little meatier, and there was one fairly juicy woodland disappearance, so I dispatched free agents to investigate. We'll spend the rest of the morning going over the reports F kept nagging me to look at. He made a special point of printing them out and dropping them on my chair, so I can't really blow him off anymore. 4 p.m. Finally read what F was so desperate for me to look at. Photographs of stone tablets, photocopied multiple times into meaningless grey blurs, with handwritten translations underneath. God knows where they were dredged up from, but the gist of it seems to be a timeline of events yet to come. Ancient prophecy is a flaky area at the best of times, but I have to admit there were some spooky specifics here. What F felt was most relevant is that the timeline ends in a matter of days from now. I asked him if this was going to turn into the Mayan thing all over again, but then he pointed out that the timeline doesn't merely end per se. It devolves into illustrations, and some rather disquieting ones at that. At least he seems to think so. All I could see was a bunch of overly photocopied nonsense. What I did find unnerving was the way he kept grinning and sweating as he described it. Tuesday, 9 a.m. Heard back from 2 hauntings. One came up empty, the other was the classic cheating spouse scenario. Haven't heard back from Walker, who was looking into the forest disappearance. That's a little unusual. Walker's been at this long enough to know the importance of checking in. Then again, we all get complacent. 2 p.m. F was waiting in my office when I got back from lunch, asking if I'd looked up at the sky. For the last 2 days it's been completely overcast, and the clouds are as dark as storm clouds, but it hasn't rained at all. He seems to think that this is predicted in the tablets he showed me. There's a fairly clear reference to the darkening of the skies in the end times. It's about as standard as apocalyptic imagery gets, and personally I'm not going to worry until it manages something a little more drastic than mediocre picnicking weather. Still, I have to admit, I definitely remember a strange feeling as I was buying lunch at the burger van by the river. It was nothing I could see. The air looked clear, but it felt thick upon my skin and in my lungs, as if it were filled with greasy dust. I could taste it trying to flood my mouth either side of my burger. I could easily dismiss this as all in my mind, but I like to think that I know my mind. Wednesday, 8 a.m. Walker's wife just called first thing. He never came home from the woodland job. He's not answering his phone. Simmons is closest. I ordered him to check Walker's last known position, but not to follow him into the forest. You have to be careful with these occasions. One mysterious disappearance can very easily become several if it's a major situation and the backup isn't properly briefed. Incidentally, was halfway through the usual cover story when Mrs. Walker revealed that she already knew the true nature of Walker's employment. Have informed C. He's going to write one of his angry headmaster's circulars. It's disappointing when you can't trust your own field agents to lie to their spouses on their own initiative. Thursday, 1 p.m. The sky was darker yesterday and darker still today. The noon daylight was more like a bluish twilight on winter's late afternoon. I don't want to start buying into F and his doomsday rocks, but sometimes I have these dreams where I'm the snarky skeptic at the start of a horror film, who inevitably dies at the end of the first reel. Simmons found Walker, or at least part of him. The DNA test confirmed it. It was at the base of a tree, and had been hurried with such force that splashes of blood were also found on the trees 8 feet away. Frankly, I'm now quite glad that Mrs. Walker already knows the true nature of her husband's job, as it would have been a very difficult explanation otherwise. 11 p.m. I saw the full moon tonight during a brief break in the clouds on my way home from work. It made me recall my conversation with C on Monday. But as I was thinking about that, I'm prepared to swear that I saw something in the sky, momentarily silhouetted against the white circle. I saw it for only a fraction of a second, but I'm certain it was not a bird. It was too fat and possessed thin, bat-like wings. I do not know what to make of it. I am currently drinking neat whiskey so that I might fall asleep. Friday, 10 a.m. Far too hungover for the conversation I just had with Simmons. He had a strange tale to tell. It had fallen on him to inform Mrs. Walker that whatever was left of her husband couldn't possibly still be alive. But she had insisted that she had received a call from Walker yesterday evening. Her phone's records confirmed it. Simmons, of course, told her that someone must have picked up Walker's mobile, but she simply could not be persuaded that the man she had spoken to was not her husband. She knows him best. I shared some concerns with C, but he none too subtly pointed out the new reports of strange events that had been pouring into my in-tray with gathering speed, and that I cannot afford to devote so much focus to a single case. I'd only barely been aware of the increased incident rate. Maybe there was something to be said for this full moon theory. 9 p.m. Simmons just called after hours. He wanted to check on Mrs. Walker this evening, but she was gone. The house was dark and properly locked up, and the car was missing. Simmons did a quick search. She'd given him a spare key for reasons I won't speculate on, and found a few essentials missing, as if she'd packed an overnight bag. She left her phone, though, and the record showed another call received from Walker's mobile an hour or two previously. I was about to order Simmons not to go to the forest, but bit my tongue. Knowing him, it would only put the idea into his head. Sunday, 4 p.m. Not a particularly relaxing weekend. The sky keeps getting darker each day, and when I went for a walk, I noticed the clouds in the overcast sky are moving quite unnaturally, all in different directions, like maggots crawling over each other. I received a text from F today. He's been spending all his time locked in his office researching. The message was only 4 words. Don't turn your back. I replied, asking for clarification, but he has sent no other messages. I have resolved to stop by his office tomorrow morning for a serious note-comparing session. Monday, 11 a.m. F is dead. I came in very early today, and I was the first to discover his body, lying face down in the communal hallway that separates all the senior offices. From the angle of his body, he had been heading from his office to mine. I am well past believing in coincidence. He was coming to tell me something important. Cause of death appeared to be attack from behind, which scarcely does it justice. The back of the head is in absolute ruin. I can't even begin to speculate on what weapon was used. The only thing I can picture that might fit the bill would be some kind of souped-up electric whisk with razor blades attached. I noticed that the cameras in the corridor were still recording, and went straight to the security room. The guard on duty had already prepared the CCTV footage for viewing. It had been clumsily edited. A relevant period had been covered with footage of an empty corridor. The timestamp hadn't even changed. The guard was insistent that the disc was unmodified, but his gaze kept darting downwards when I followed his eyes. I saw that his hand was bandaged. 3 of his fingers were missing joints. He gave me a look, wordlessly begging me not to persist. I noticed at this point that the room was silent, despite being right next to the security common room, from which muffled conversation would usually be drifting. I passed by the door to the common room on my way out. The glass in the door was frosted, but there was definitely at least one person in there, wearing a security guard cap. They were standing, unmoving in the middle of the room, despite the abundance of chairs. 1 p.m. There is a strong possibility that this will be the last thing I write in this journal. After my encounter in the security room, I decided to return to the office level to discuss the matter with C. As I passed through the hall, I saw that F's body had already been taken away, and the two cleaning ladies were dutifully attempting to scrub the soaked-in bloodstains out of the carpet. I am no expert in blood splatter pattern analysis, but a few things began nagging as I crossed the room. I realized that my previous interpretation, that F had been killed moving from his office to mine, did not fit the pattern of the stains on the carpet. Plenty of blood had been pooled where the body had lay, but that had been after the body had been at rest. There was no splattering to indicate that the attack happened there. This meant that either F's body had been moved, or that he had survived long enough after receiving that terrible wound to crawl as far as my door. And it didn't take a genius to follow the trail of the soap bubbles and the carpet cleaning foam. F was not attacked from behind while crossing the hallway. He had been attacked from behind while leaving C's office. It had also occurred to me that I did not see C go home on Friday night. I have sent the cleaners away, and am writing this in preparation for going into C's office. I will take a loaded gun with me. I will leave this journal on my desk. If this is the last entry, then I can only hope that what little I have gleaned of the situation will be of use to you, reader. 1:30 p.m. I am alive. C is not. My gun is now empty, and there are no more bullets. It honestly surprises me that only half an hour has passed since my last writing. C was behind his desk when I entered the room. There was immediately something off. He sat stiffly and straight-backed, with his hands under the desktop. There was no work in front of him, and his face was smiling faintly. I asked him if he knew what had happened to F, and he claimed not to know what I was talking about in a vague, dreamy tone of voice. I looked away for only a moment to open his office door and show him the blood in the carpet. As I was doing so, I heard a strange wet cracking sound from behind me, and my subconscious mind immediately threw up F's strange text from Sunday night. Don't turn your back! Something long and scythe-like whooshed through the air, but I was already diving to the side. I took my gun and emptied the magazine into the thing masquerading as C, which was now fully displayed, having shoved the desk aside. Its top half was still C, and the babbling nonsense coming out of its mouth certainly sounded like C's voice, but the bottom half was something else entirely. I do not presently have the energy to describe it fully. Whatever it was, I killed it. When I lowered the gun, it seemed pacified, quivering and weeping on the floor. To be safe, I picked up C's standing lamp and pounded the remains. I did not stop until every part that could conceivably contain a brain had been smashed into the carpet. The disadvantage of running a secret organization is that there are very few people I can call for help. Let's face it, F and C and I are supposed to be the people that you call for help in situations like this. We are the last resort, the highest authority on occult troubleshooting in the nation. Perhaps even the world. I do not want to think about where that now leaves me, or the world. I have a lot of work to do now. 6:30 p.m. The internet in the building has not been working since noon. The IT department aren't picking up the phone. I figure either they're taking care of it, or something else has taken care of them. Either way, I doubt going to the office in person would be at all productive. I have remained in the office for the whole afternoon trying to reach people through good old-fashioned landlines. I had a message from Simmons. Predictably enough, he said he was going to head into the forest to find Walker. And of course, he's not answering my calls now. I called every name on my list of agents, and most of them didn't pick up either. A few did, but answered in a tone of voice reminiscent of the way C had been talking at the start of today's meeting. The small handful left over all seemed to be caught up in struggles of their own. I gave them all a place and a time for a rendezvous, which I will not repeat here for obvious reasons. I need to get home, pick up a few essentials, and make for the rendezvous. I'll try to update the diary on the road. 7 p.m. Change of plan. I'm still in my office. The building was permeated with an eerie stillness as I made my way to the ground floor. I could feel eyes watching me through the office windows and over cubicle walls. A janitor glanced slowly up at me as I walked past. He was dunking the mop in and out of his bucket over and over again, making no efforts to clean the floor, which was, in any case, carpeted. I opted to take the stairs. The lift seemed like too much of an obvious trap. I got as far as the lobby, and Nick, the security guard at reception, offered a broad smile and greeting as I entered. But then I noticed the way he was sitting behind the desk, stiffly with both hands hidden, and there was that subtle wrongness with the voice. I'm almost certain there was. I met his gaze and remained frozen for a while, debating options. My gun was out of bullets, and besides, I wasn't 100% certain he was one of them. At the same time, I could think of no line of questioning or action that could have made it clearer without also giving away that I was onto them. Nick kept smiling throughout. Remembering F's text, I slowly walked backwards away from him, maintaining eye contact and groping behind me for the main entrance doors. Eventually, my hands found them, as well as a rattling loop chain and a padlock. "Would you like me to come over there and open it for you, sir?" asked Nick. He kept smiling. I could have picked the lock, but not without turning to look at it, not without turning my back. I stared at him, silently, fidgeting with the chain for what felt like several minutes. Then I speed-walked back to the stairwell and all the way back to my office, frustrated at myself. I also barricaded the door with a filing cabinet. On the bright side, the internet service provider people called me back. They said they'll send someone to come look at the line in about a week. While entirely useless, I found it comforting. Tuesday, 5:25 a.m. Woken by what meager daylight can penetrate the omnipresent clouds, I spent the night sitting in my office chair, staring at the door. I kept all my desk drawers open, the ones I keep full of anti-occult apparatus. Nothing happened all night, not even a sound. That in itself is a bad sign. I heard none of the bustle one would expect from people going home for the day, or from the cleaners. That thought made me wonder if the corpse of the sea thing had been discovered. Emboldened by the daylight, I moved the barricade and opened the door a crack, peering out into the hall. In response, something, I didn't see what, threw the door to C's office open with a violent crash. I quickly pulled my door closed and replaced the barricade, just as something heavy and bipedal stomped along the hallway towards my door. I was expecting it to try the handle, but it merely hesitated and stomped away towards the elevator. 8:20 a.m. Very little has changed since my last entry. I get the feeling that whatever this insidious force that has taken over the building is, it is wary of me. Probably after it saw what I did to the sea thing. Not so wary that it won't do something unspeakable to me if I try to leave, I'm sure. But for now, it seems content to have trapped me in my office. From my window, which of course refuses to open, the city seems to be going about its business fairly normally, from what little I can see, although the streets seem somewhat lightly populated. What pedestrians there are seem to quicken their pace as they pass the building, perhaps sensing a subtle wrongness about it. It implies that some kind of calculating intelligence is behind this invasion, if it has deliberately focused its energies on just my building and my agents, the entities that pose the biggest threat towards it. I am surprised that the phones are still working, both my landline and my mobile. I know, because I received a call this morning. I did not answer it, because the caller ID read Simmons. 11:45 a.m. If F's manuscript were accurate, it can only be a matter of days before the end of the world. If not an end, then a hideous transformative change into a wholly different, far less agreeable world. It is my helplessness that frustrates me more than anything else. I feel like I should be more afraid. I've been making a game out of concocting sentences that should be driving me insane. The world is ending. All of history has been pointless. I am going to die, probably from unspeakable violation. I can hold the sentence in my head, acknowledge the meaning of each word, but feel nothing. Maybe things would be different if I'd had more of a stake in this world, if I'd ever married, or had children, or maybe more than a small handful of friends, mostly dead. If I had done more than just ghosted through life, swimming just below the surface, only occasionally raising my head. Well, in a few days, it won't matter, will it? 3:20 p.m. I called one of my agents I'd arranged to rendezvous, and astonishingly he answered. Things are looking pretty bleak in the outside world. The situation here at the ministry is repeating itself in various centres of power and industry. But my agent, Keegan for the record, has managed to hold up in an untainted village. No one else came to the meetup, but I'm barely even surprised at this point. He told me that there was a resistance. No one really understands what's happening, but there's a street barricade here and a militia there. And I should have realized that F wouldn't have been the only kook who knew how to translate those damn stones. Keegan told me that there was some kind of scholar attached to one of the less reputable universities, travelling from town to town and apparently making a remarkable amount of headway. His name rang a bell. One of those well-read occultists that we keep an eye on in case someone administrative needs replacing in a hurry. I found my old Rolodex at the bottom of the filing cabinet, and sure enough, I still have his details. I thought about calling him, if only for the human contact, but my calls seem to have a bad habit of getting agents killed. I wouldn't want to startle him in the middle of some battle to the death with a creature from the Black Lagoon. Text messages then. I can send advice, tip-offs, whatever money I can scrape together. Anything I can do is a gamble at best, so probably smarter to throw everything into one pot. It's not much, and it's almost certainly not going to be enough. But at least I feel like I'm doing something. Wednesday, 3 a.m. I might have saved the world once. I keep forgetting that. It's a bit of a grey area, and I don't like thinking about it. Indirectly, I may have saved the world a couple of other times, or at least played some part in the process. So there's my contribution. A lifetime of postponing the inevitable. Nut in a felt crown, outstretching his hands to usher back the tide. For some reason, trapped here with only my memories for company, I can't stop thinking about the women. Always so fascinated by me, wanting to share in my life of adventure. I felt like a man up to his waist in a tar pit, and they were standing on solid ground, asking me how the tar was. I played the martyr, stayed aloof, pushed them away. But was I actually concerned for their safety? Or stroking my ego again? Because I know what I would do if I had my time again. If I had to choose between saving the world or stealing a few moments of love before the end, I would let it all burn. Every man, woman, and child, if it meant that I could feel the warmth of another human being in my arms. I may have saved the world, but that couldn't make me a good person. Good people don't have jobs like mine. Good people don't end up like this. 5:45 a.m. My phone rang all night. Simmons half the time, Walker the other half. I didn't answer. Just let them ring and ring and ring until the battery ran out. I can't charge it with the electricity disconnected, and I don't want to. After an hour of incessant ringing, I tried burying it in the deepest desk drawer under piles of papers. But the building is so steeped in this maddening silence that it was still audible, and its vibrations shook the entire desk. There is so little light in here now. I opened the curtains to let in the lugubrious morning light, and something slapped against the window. It reminded me of the strange flying shape I had seen in front of the moon. That feels like a lifetime ago. Except huge, inches from my face, its many pliant flaps and tendrils fluttering against the glass, trying to get at me. I remember a sucking mouth like a lamprey eel before I yanked the curtains closed. I sit now, on the floor, in the silent darkness, with my back to the barricade, it being the furthest point in the room from the windows and the desk. I can hear them, subtly abandoned, slivering and thumping against every possible point of access. I long for this to be over. The uncertainty of which of the many possible outcomes we are now certainly speeding towards, that is what terrifies me. Perhaps the scholar will succeed, and all of this will just go away. Perhaps I will escape and join the effort to resist. Perhaps I will be destroyed in every possible way that one can be destroyed. Unacceptable. Nothing to be gained from moping into this diary until fate rolls the dice. I got where I am today by taking control, and that's what I'm doing. One way or another, I will end the uncertainty. Good morning, world.